started to here. But this is aggression scaling right here. And really, aggression scaling, like I said, this can be applied to the micro level of an individual player. Most often, I will talk about this with tank players, because tanks usually for the team are the ones dictating aggression. So basically, they'll be controlling their entire team's aggression for the most part. At least they have the biggest impact on it, because they'll be the ones who are pushing and backing. And typically, tanks are the ones who therefore have the most pronounced aggression, and their aggression is the most important because it has more of an impact on the game. But this can still be very helpful even for DPS and supports, because sometimes DPS and supports can get too aggressive sometimes or too passive other times. So it's still handy. And then, like I said, this can also be applied team-wide to say our team as a whole should be playing this aggressive at this time and this passive at this time. And sometimes it's just a little bit off, right? Like where you should be playing aggressive, but really you're not. So
Yeah.
aggression scaling is really, it's a tool that you can use. It's not, yeah, it's something that will help basically take the abstract concept and put it a little bit more into a way that's able to be understood, right, and applied. But basically, to start off, you have your neutral of 50%, or you're putting it on a scale from 0 to 100. Neutral is 50%, and usually you start off every fight at a neutral because nothing's happened yet. Nothing has changed or dictated your gameplay yet, so therefore you're just coming in, and that doesn't mean that you're doing nothing. Usually that means that your team's kind of poking and prodding. Maybe you're pushing and you're backing and you're shielding. You're playing on the corner. You're basically looking for something to happen. So neutral doesn't mean you're sitting around doing nothing, but it also doesn't mean that you're sprinting into their team, right? It means that you're just kind of existing and you're trying to make something happen. And then your super passive is 0%, and super aggressive is 100%. And you're going to go up this scale with advantages and with opportunities, and you go down the scale with disadvantages, a lack of resources, and danger. So let's define a couple of those advantages and disadvantages. I believe we have gone over how to tell whether or not you've won or lost a fight, right?
Yes, yes, we have.
Yep, so this is along the same vein of thoughts with advantages and disadvantages. Now this is just getting that's how to tell whether or not you've won or lost. This is just getting more broad with it. Advantages, right, are going to be things like kills, right? You're up a person, you go from 50 to 60. You're up 2 people, you go to 70. 3 people, 80. You're down a person, maybe you go from 50 to 40. 2 people, 40 to 30, and so forth, right, in both directions. But there's also a lot of other advantages and disadvantages, such as which team has more health, better positioning, more ults, more abilities, closer spawns, things like that, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
other things that will also impact aggression. Opportunities are going to be things like, oh, you see someone who's 1 HP, or out of position, or maybe you have your ultimate, and you're pushing and getting more aggressive to capitalize on that opportunity. And then a lack of resources is going to be things like, as a tank, think through things like your health is a resource, your shield or your defensive ability is a resource. And for every other character, your health is a resource. Mobility can be a resource. If you don't have mobility, then you can't do anything. So think of it this way: the things that pull you down the scale, they don't pull you up the scale, right? So lack of resources. If you have resources, if you have health, you're not automatically going and jumping into their team. That's not how that works. But if you don't have health, you certainly can't play aggressive. So it pulls you down the scale. It doesn't pull you up the scale. It just means that you have the capability of playing aggressive if you have your abilities. So if you lack your health, if you're 1 HP, you're probably playing super passive. If you don't have your shield, maybe not. It's not as dangerous, but still you can't play as aggressive. If you don't have movement abilities, you can't play as aggressive. Things like that. Defensive abilities, movement abilities. things gonna negate damage, all of the above, right? Genji, it's gonna be things like dash and deflect. Ana, it's gonna be things like sleep and nade, right? Across all these different characters and even team wide, if you don't have resources, you have to play a little bit passive. Danger, that's going to be things like how many people are looking at you and shooting at you and ulting at you and using abilities at you. So you're not going to be in any danger if nobody's looking in your direction. But if you have 5 people looking at you, that's pretty dangerous. If you have 2 people ulting you, that's pretty dangerous. And if you have 3 people ulting you, you might not want to be pushing into them. You might want to wait it out and just play a little bit more passive, right? So now that we've talked about all that, your aggression scale. Oh, sorry. Did you say something?
Sorry, I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, okay, okay, all good. Sounded like you were like talking to someone else. um, so now that we have all that said, your aggression scale sometimes can look pretty stagnant, where it's just kind of, or static, right? Where it's just sitting at one, like, for example, let's say you're just staggering the enemy team over and over again for 25 seconds. It might stay at 100% aggressive for 25 seconds, right? Which is pretty flat. Whereas sometimes it can be very fluctuating and it can be all over the place. So you might come into a fight and be at 50% aggression at your neutral, and then you see, oh, their tank's 1 HP, push, 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 and you run in, and then all of a sudden you get headshot, or they start ulting, and now you have to back up and play passive. So now you just went from 50 to 100 to 0 all within the course of a second. So it's really just something that you have to pay attention to, and that's why aggression is very closely tied to awareness, because you need to know what's happening around you to be able to make effective decisions on when to push and when to back. You won't be able to know when to push if you don't know what's happening in the fight around you. So awareness and aggression very tightly intermingled, and it's just, this is a way to break it down, and you can think, while you're going through a replay, but even while you're watching a game, of like, okay, how is this player or how is this team, what is their current aggression, and where should it really be right now, right? So you'll find examples where maybe the player or the team is just kind of sitting around and playing their 50% when they have like 2 picks and they should be at 100%, but they're just kind of sitting there. And then if your aggression's off, then that gives them the opportunity to regroup, to maybe get a pick or two, and then that pull swings it around and they didn't get to capitalize on their opportunity quick enough. Or it could be the opposite, where they're playing super aggressive when there's no reason why they should be playing super aggressive. They're just like running in for the sake of running in, and they're playing at 100%, and really they should be at 50%. So you gotta watch for when there's inconsistencies. Does that entire concept make sense? Any questions throughout any of it?
Oh, that makes sense. The aggression scaling does make sense.
Cool. Awesome. So maybe we'll take a bit of a look at that as we look through this replay here. And then also, just so that I can have a reminder, have we talked in depth on like staggering before?
Yes, we had talked about staggering.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, let's get the recording going. I'm streaming. Let's see. We'll take a look at a good old Team 2 here and work from the Reds' point of view. Because usually, I mean, like, when you're going to be doing replay, you're going to be looking at your team and analyzing what your team's
Yeah.
doing. You're not going to be playing from the perspective of both sides, and that's honestly for the better, because that would be way more information, right? Like, it's already so hard to track what's happening, and that'd be like trying to pay attention to twice as much if you're trying to coach 2 teams at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a look firstly at the map. Firstly, what team, in order between dive, brawl, and spam. Looking at this map here, which team composition is the best, which team composition is second best, and which is the third best?
I would say it'd probably go Spam, then dive,
Mm, mm-hmm. Yep,
because
that
there's a
makes
lot
sense.
of narrow corridors.
Mm, yep,
Um,
or more accurately, I'd say rather than narrow corridors, because narrow corridors makes that sound a little bit more brawly, right? It's long open sight lines, right?
yeah.
Like from here, I can see all the way to over there, right? And they have very little cover if they're following the payload trail, which, as a reminder, most payload maps and push maps on the payload trail, there's very little cover outside of the payload, right? Which makes a lot of them very good spammy maps. In a lot of cases, because if you follow this trail at any point, so I can see from here to there, I can see from here to there, I can see from here to there, and like so anywhere I'm positioning here, I have such long open sight lines, which makes spam very, very good. So you had a really good assessment. Why would dive be second best, and why would brawl be third?
Because for dive, the ability to get into these sight lines where there's a lot of narrow points and choke points would give you the ability to take the upper hand.
Mm,
And then I feel like Brawl would just kind of end up. You would be running characters who don't have a lot of ways to dive in into long sight lines that would get them
mm,
killed.
mm-hmm. Yep. So brawl actually has the. I liked how you worded the brawl. They have an active disadvantage because one, this is a long open map, which means that the map itself gives them a disadvantage because it's not tight and close. But then also the fact that they're probably going to be playing spam characters, which is has a slight rock paper scissors benefit against the brawl, right? So it's kind of a
All right.
twofold effect. The dive,
I think.
I think you're right about how they're decent on the map, right? It's kind of spam's best, dive is decent, brawl is kind of yeah, it's meh. You could make it work, but it's not the best. Um, but I'm not sure if I like the way you articulated why it's good because you're talking about narrow chokes and there's not really a lot of narrow chokes on this map. Like there's like this right here, but narrow chokes aren't also what make dive good. What makes dive good? Because narrow chokes are what make brawl good, right? Like if there were more of these right here, that would make brawl better. But you can see there's really only like one on first point, one between second and third point, and then like maybe this one right here. So like maybe like one, and they're still pretty wide. These aren't very tiny chokes. Um, they're not very long chokes, and they're pretty wide chokes. So they're like, yeah, they're kind of weak choke points. Um, so if there were more of those, that'd be good for brawl. But what makes this decent for dive? I'd say there's like two kind of reasons.
I would say dive's probably better for this, for the sheer fact that you can dive into the back line
Mm, mm-hmm,
of people like Widow and stuff, making
mm-hmm.
sure you clean them up.
So yep, that's reason number one. Very good because dive has that slight rock paper scissors advantage against a spam, right? Because dive can get on top of spam very easily and close the distance very quickly, right? So yep,
Yeah.
so the matchup would be better here. For the dive, but then also I'd say there's something about map geometry. Maybe it's especially apparent on second point here. What does dive like about second point?
There's little broken sight lines. Um, Also, the ability that if you dive in, you're more than likely not going to die to a poke,
Mm,
especially on these like stairs right here in the front.
So the ability to get to them fast, but
Yeah.
what it is that allows them to get to them quickly and traverse really easily. Because if you just had long open sight lines, it's still like decently hard for the dive to get to you. But what makes it pretty good for dive is lots of verticality. This map has a decent bit of verticality, right, where you have lots of high grounds, right? So think on second point here, look at this massive vertical jump that dive can instantly traverse, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a spam setup here, yeah, this is good for spam because they can shoot you from here. And this is why it's really bad for dives, or sorry, for brawl, is because brawl would have to run all the way around, and spam gets to shoot at them the entire time. But a dive can instantly get on top of them, right? And instantly take that space. Whereas if you're coming from a longer range, you have to like run up and play cover and like try to be careful, and then you can dive in, because it's just harder to get the horizontal dive than it is to get a vertical dive. First point, you have this high ground here, which is decent for diving. Second point, you have this main high ground. Not that anyone plays over there, really. Third point, you have this high ground, as well as this high ground, as well as this high ground, right? So, and then third point's also probably the the tightest. So third point is where you probably can really see all three comps shining a little bit, because you have
Yeah.
it's still long open, but it's a little bit tighter for brawl, and then it's also there's high grounds that dive can get to. Does that make sense as an explanation?
Yeah, the final point would make a lot more sense for possibly changing up the strats,
Mm-hmm.
but the verticality makes more sense.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So I mean, like that's a really simple way that you can think about the difference between the three on maps. Brawl likes tight and close. Spam likes open and wide, and open and wide high grounds. Dive um, likes diverse terrain, as well as as steep verticality, not long open high grounds. Like notice that there's a difference between this one, where this is kind of like a wide open high ground, versus
Yeah.
the steep verticality of this high ground. This is a better dive high ground. This is the better spam high ground. Right. All right. Well, let's get started on it.
Ready for 2, 1. Attackers incoming. Stop the payload.
Okay. So, red team, blue team. What is each team running here?
So let's see. So team two is running Bam, and team one is running um I guess you could say spam as well, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, hamster kind of just gets in at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a hybrid on team one, possibly, but I would say more
Okay.
spam.
Yeah. Yep. Good analysis, because you're right. The ball kind of is the wild card there, but you're right. It's still a spam because all four other characters are spam, right? So if and
Yeah.
ball is flexible enough. A lot of the times you'll notice that divey characters are pretty flexible characters, and divey tanks can kind of like work to better with spammy DPS and supports than, let's say, brawl can. Like a brawl tank would have a really hard time working with this, with spammy DPS and supports. Um, so you're right. This is a primarily spam comp with a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
There may be a bit less spammy than red team here, but at the same time they also have a Moira, so that doesn't really help. Moira probably isn't like too fantastic for this team comp, because she's
Yeah, I would say.
more brawling. What would be a better, if not Moira, because Moira is, um, a pretty brawly character. She can't really do range too well. What other support would work well with this composition?
Um, I would say probably like Baptiste,
Mm-hmm.
Anna,
Mm-hmm. Well,
um,
Anna's, um, good with a brawl because she has a lot of burst healing and a nade that can heal a clumped up group of people, as well as nano,
That's
which
true.
combos with a lot of people, a lot of brawl characters. She also works good in a dive because she can see the dive and shoot and heal them very easily, as well as her nano usually combos with a lot of dive characters. Um, Now, Spam, Anna's a pretty flexible character, so she's able to work like okay in the Spam, but Spam's probably her weakest composition because Spam, like she can kind of like spam in her abilities, but she doesn't have any spam damage. And then she doesn't, and then spam's usually taking like a lesser amount of healing, so she doesn't like really get value out of her burst healing. So she's not like doing damage from a distance. Her healing is less important, her burst healing's less important, and her abilities are on really long cooldowns. Now compare that to a character like Baptiste, who can damage effectively from a range, who has an ability I mean, sleep. So I'll think about sleep. How sleep works. Sleep works if you can be near them. It's so much harder to land her abilities from a range if you're sitting a mile away. And then who's gonna capitalize on a sleep if you sleep someone 30 meters away? But a Baptiste can give immortality for his team when they're taking damage. His window combos super well with a spam composition. Really, his whole kit just works much, much better around spam. Whereas Anna's more like okay with it. Right? She's a bit more meh with the spam. Still workable, but I'd say that she's probably better off in a dive in a brawl.
Yeah,
Right. And any
that
other
makes sense.
characters that could be picked?
Maybe Kiriko.
Kiriko. Um, Once again, I'd say that Kiri probably gets most value out of um, firstly a dive, secondly a brawl, and thirdly a spam. But once again, she is also a flexible character. Um, but you can think through once again, her damage isn't as consistent as Zenyatta or Baptiste. She can't do that. Kiriko is actually like has very inconsistent long range damage. She likes to be close to people for her damage because it's very slow projectiles. One way you can think about this is that very slow projectiles inherently are difficult to land at a range, including on a sleep, on a nade, Kiriko, Kunai, sorry, are very difficult to land at range, and therefore she's not going to do great on damaging from a range. Her healing is going to do decent, right? That's going to be fine. But then also like her her not no what's it called Suzu. Suzu is going to be like a very temporary cleanse, which is typically helpful in a brawl, but isn't as valuable when you're just kind of spamming because it's hard to like predict when someone's going to get headshot. Whereas in a brawl, you can see their health getting lower. Um, Her ult is decent. Her ult's decent with the spam, but then also, her ult is for running in and getting on them, whereas spam would just be like kind of sitting in it, right?
Yeah,
Um, and then what's her other ability? And then who's she gonna be TPing to, right? Like if your spam's just kind of like sitting around on the high ground, then like if you're all just sitting up here on this high ground, then who is she TPing to? Like maybe if she gets dove, she could TP. So once again, it's not that she's bad, it's just that it's probably not her comp of preference, her comp of choice. Um, so some characters that could be good here besides Baptiste, I think Baptiste is a really good choice here. Mercy, honestly, it would be pretty good because you can combo that with the Widowmaker and the Ashe. Mercy's really good at damage boosting. Spam characters, and then if they get picked, right? So let's say your Widowmaker gets sniped, then you have the res available to bring them back into the fight. And because you're in a spam, they can't really contest you because you're so far away. But if you're in a brawl, Mercy's really bad in brawl, right? Because if someone
yeah.
dies in a brawl, you're on top of them, and it's gonna be really difficult to get a res in. Um, and then let's see what other supports are there. I mean, Alari It's gonna be decent in a spam. Um, Lots of sustained healing and decent damage from a range. Zenyatta, really good in a spam. Um, I don't know. Yeah, that's. I guess those are a few of them, a few of the options. All that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does.
Hey. Hello. Damn. Dynamite out.
Okay, so their Widowmaker's coming back from spawn. Here. Blue team doesn't really have full high ground control either. Alright, so this goes pretty quickly. Ball comes and slams the back line, while Ball's out in the back line. Sigma pushes high ground with Ashe, pushes them off pretty easily. They didn't really have very much high ground control. I don't think they really had their Widow with them either. Alright, pretty quick first point. They just kind of
Yeah.
fell apart.
It was not a coordinated push.
Oh, I remember. This is a really not great Widowmaker game on my part. Because I think, or very meh. I think I was having an important discussion during this.
I mean, that does happen sometimes.
Okay, so Dive is coming in. Kiri goes with Ball. Ashe and Moira. Moira came over to help Ashe on the high ground. Sigma's low. Widow shooting at Ball. Okay, they take out the ball.
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
Hello.
Okay, things are going pretty smooth. Uh-oh. What happens? What happens over here?
That Moira really overcommitted.
Yeah. So what was the Moira?
Yeah.
So what was the Moira's aggression there?
Hyper.
Hyper. So where would you put it on the scale?
Probably at least like a 90 to 100.
Yeah, exactly. And then where should it have been on the scale?
Probably like a 50.
Yeah, this is just kind of like the pokey face, right? Nothing's happened yet, so
Yeah.
exactly. She should be back with the Widow and the Ashe, just kind of doing her thing. Yeah, exactly right. Okay, so next Widow gets picked. Um, Something that I probably should have done more in this game was taking like off angles to try to get the first shot off on her, but instead I kept trying to just like jump in at her from the front. This is something in sniper duels that you'll find a lot of times. So Ashe, Widow, Hanzo, Sojourn, right? These snipey characters, even if you want to add in like a Zenyatta or something like that. So when it comes to snipers, typically, especially Widowmaker, typically the first person to see the other person has the advantage. They especially at higher ranks, we are more like, and especially after the Widowmaker changes, now they just nerfed it, but it's still better than it was before. Widow's projectile size, right? If you see the other enemy Widowmaker first, if you get the surprise advantage, this probably scales a little bit depending what range you're at. At lower ranks, maybe you can say you have like a 50% chance of winning, right? I guess, sorry, not 50%, because that mean neutral. Let's say it's like a 75% chance of winning, right? Whereas at higher ranks, that's maybe, or I'm trying to think about how to say this. Maybe lower ranks it's like a 60-65%. Higher ranks maybe it's like 80%, 85% chance. Because if you get that jump on her through off angles, through coming on out on the side here, instead of just jumping through main, because Widowmaker's looking down main. If you get the surprise advantage and peek her on the side here, well then you can get the first snipe off and have a major advantage because you can just headshot her before she has a chance to look at you. So, therefore, that's how Widowmakers and snipers should be playing against each other: is taking off angles to get the jump on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas comparatively, if they if you're running sniper comp and they're running no snipers, then you want to take the widest open sight lines as possible because then you just want to see and shoot as much as possible, and they can't really contest you as easily, um, and
Yeah.
and whatnot. So your positioning changes based off of team compositions. Team comp dictates play style. Okay, so at this point, team's lost. Probably just staggering. Yeah, so right, so um, these guys right here, right? Widowmaker, the dum dum, pushes back out of spawn when the teammates are dead, and ends up dying and staggering. These guys, right? Instead of noting that they can't get out, they try to escape and stagger, right? So it just ends up wasting time and feeding them ult charge, meaning that now they have an ult advantage, right? So they're coming into this fight with a lot of ults, and Team 2, yeah, probably has an equal amount of ults, but it just kind of feeds them extra ult charge. Um, what are the ults here? Is there anything that should be countered, and then what should Team Two's ult combo or ult plan be?
Well, I forget what Widow's ult does.
Widow's ult is seeing through walls.
Okay.
The whole team can see through walls.
Um, I feel like the Zen ult would probably come in handy for the Widow ult,
Hmm.
almost as a counter pick for it, just in case.
Hmm.
It seems like it's going to be a little bit hard to counteract a soldier ball and Widow ult, though.
Yeah, which Widow ult, generally speaking, is pretty low powered, right? It only allows them to normally get picks, right? But they can see
Yeah.
where you're at. Um, and the other thing to keep in mind is that Zenalt won't stop headshots from a Widowmaker either. Um, won't stop her from one tapping. So generally speaking, I'd say that Zenalt isn't really necessary for us Widow sites because remember, not every ultimate needs a counter, right? Like for example,
True.
if your team has a Moira ult, you don't necessarily need a counter for a Moira ult because it's a pretty low powered ultimate. Um, but a visor or a ball mines, they might be a little bit more difficult. So maybe Zenyatta can trance one of those, both if they're able, or tell them like they're gonna have mines and sights, ult for whichever one seems more dangerous, right? At the time, sort of deal. That makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Hmm. And then, what should your team be doing?
I'm going to say, am I red team in this scenario?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I would say trying to let Sigma get his ult up before even remotely trying to push in would probably be the best course of action. Because Moira could sit on her ult, even though it's low impact, it could still clean up if necessary off the Sigma ult.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Zen ult would just kind of come in as well if you're worried about your entire team getting wiped off the face of the earth again.
Yeah, so you can say Sig combo Sigma and Moira, and then transit needed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that sounds like a good plan to me. And then therefore, we should be holding on to sites and not using sites.
Yeah.
Okay. So, staggering again, because notice how they're pushing out a spawn without the rest of their team. And ball's holding pretty close.
Yeah, and just knock somebody off the map.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard. Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Smoke him out of there.
Okay, so Widow gets peeked. We just keep losing people one by one by one.
Area denied.
The Ash gets picked. So at this point, what could be some reasons why? I mean, we'll see. Let's watch it continue, and then we'll come back to it because I think that'll probably trend will keep coming where the snipers are losing the sniper duel.
Gueule de Mahawk.
Het universum zingt voor mij!
Okay, so Moira and Sigma try the combo,
Het universum zingt voor mij!
but they're both ulting. I guess Moira's
They
ulting
kind of
before.
ulted off time in two very different locations.
Yeah. So once again, noting how Moira's just like diving in by herself on the cart. Sigma comes in with his ults. Only gets one person with it. So we use two ults to get one pick. Backline got decimated though, so still it's a 2v4 and they're still kind of trying to chill out on point like they can win this.
Yeah, they should have backed up.
My barrier is gone!
Bob, do something.
Pass into the iris.
And so use bomb, they use trance to counter.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Oh, Widow gets picked again. Whoop-de-doo.
That conversation must have been important for this widow to keep getting picked so hard.
Yeah, and laptop aim sucks.
That's 100% fair.
Teehee. Alright. Alright, so they come into the fight. So we're down one because Widow gets picked. We'll talk about we'll try to see if you can analyze like what could be the problem. What do you think is the problem with the snipers? What could be a solution in the situation? But firstly, let's look at this fight because they're down one person.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know, who are they chasing here? Oh, they're chasing Ball. He got out really quick. Oh my goodness. Right, so Ash. Okay, so we're down a pick. They're turned around for Ball. They're pushing in with a Kiriko ult. So, Sigma and Moira, what is their current? I guess I would say it's less about aggression here, or I guess you could say it's aggression. What is their current aggression right now?
Um, halfway to the team, halfway between their teams, so I would say like 50.
Yeah, like
But it
50.
looks like they're trying to push pretty hard, so it's going to probably go up very quickly.
So they're at 50 right now. What should it be at right now?
Should be at like 30.
Yeah, exactly, because they're down one person. Their two other teammates are still kind of walking back. They're currently ulting, so that's a disadvantage. A not fully grouped up, which is another disadvantage, and danger, right? So
Yeah.
all the reasons why they should probably be a little bit further back in this fight, but they're pretty close. Forwards, pretty split again, which just because we're constantly playing split. Like notice how every single fight here, like the Sigma is constantly like a mile ahead, and the Moira are a mile ahead of the other three, which just means the
Yeah.
ball gets more free reign to do whatever ball wants to do. Sigma doesn't get healed because he's not with Moira now, so just a little too far push forwards. Imagine if Sigma was with with these three right now, this would be a much closer fight. And if Widow was alive, too.
Yeah, because essentially Ball just been getting free reign to pick people off very quickly.
Yep. Okay. Widow tries to come back in, ends up dying. Moira's in the back line and gets a pick. Moira's in their back line again. Gets another pick. Gets another. Oh my goodness, Moira's carrying.
Apparently. Don't even need DPS anymore, you just need Moira.
Alright, so in these fights with the snipers, what is, because Team 2, to me at least, it looked like their snipers were consistently getting out-killed by both the Widow and the Zen, primarily, the Widow and the Zen, and then they were also being contested by the ball. What are different things that they could do to help remedy the situation?
Um, Probably tank keeping Ball off,
So
and also
playing
trying
as a
to draw. I'm sorry?
yeah, so playing as a team, um,
Yeah.
playing more grouped. hmm
Playing more grouped, trying to keep their Widow up on top of the fact that since there's two snipers peeking one, eventually you're going to get that headshot, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to draw some aggro off the sniper would also help quite a bit.
Yeah. hmm So other things as well, like as other things to think about, like positioning wise. Firstly, we already talked about off angling, right? Probably off angling more. Additionally, if they're getting consistently picked, they might not be using cover as well as they could be, right? If players on your team are constantly getting picked by a Widowmaker, um, they might need to just be using cover better than they are. So that's with snipers. If people are getting picked by snipers, they might not be using cover as well. If they're getting picked by flankers, they might not be paying attention to their flank as much, right? You have to pay attention to different things with different compositions, right? Because every comp plays differently and needs different things of you. And then another thing, even if like beyond the like how can we win this, is like if they're just getting out snipered, like it could just be like a hey swap characters kind of thing, right? Because it's
That or,
not.
not playing on a laptop,
Yeah, yeah,
that would
yeah.
work too.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, but swapping up characters to work into the composition better could definitely be a play. Um,
Yeah.
what characters could Widowmaker and Ashe go that would work into their composition better?
Um, Maybe Genji.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I personally like Ash
Hmm.
for the sheer fact that you can use her as either something that can go extremely quick, or she can also snipe from long range, It's kind of a nice little ability to flex between the two. I enjoy this thing you're doing here, where you're going into infinity symbols. Um, who else? Maybe even Soldier, because he can position a little bit better.
Mm.
Which we already have a Soldier on blue team, but yeah,
Hmm. So other things that the team feels like it's struggling up against, it kind of depends on what does the team feel like they're struggling into. If something that could be helpful would just be to go dive, and then if they go dive, then um, ball only really becomes a threat, really a serious threat against like the Zenyatta, right? Because if you have like a Genji Tracer, right, or something like that, right, then ball can't really get on those guys very easily, right? So you give ball less targets to run over. You could go and then that would also help contest the Widowmaker a bit more. You could go things that are a bit more anti ball. So something like McCree is a bit more anti ball. Sombra is like a divey and anti ball, right? Because you can hack the ball. You can hack and hinder the ball with the Kree's flash grenade, right? So those would be all different characters. Really, Widowmaker's not a fantastic pick here. Just because you're gonna get contested by ball and you're getting out sniped, which means like why are you on Widowmaker if you're dead constantly? And then the McCree is I'd say is a better swap than Ashe. Ashe is gonna still get rolled over from ball and was getting out sniped too. So
yeah.
Kree is gonna be a little bit better, and then for the ball and might not get
Maybe
sniped as easy.
Sarah.
Um,
Sarah might
Far
be a somewhat good pick.
Farah can get sniped pretty easily, so you have to be careful with it. I'd say she'd be good if there's a good map for Farah.
True.
This third point, this map is okay for Farah. It's not the best. She can do decent on first point. I'd say especially on attack, she's gonna do good. On defense, I'd say Farah would probably do pretty poorly on this map.
Yeah. Okay.
Because she has some high grounds to work with, but not lots of sky cover. And it's just too open, which means that hit scan are going to do really good against her, which means that like Soldier and Widowmaker are just going to pick her out of the sky.
You cannot escape me.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Okay, Kree pushes by himself. He's not with the rest of the team. I got sniped here at my ult, I think. Maybe. I can't remember. Oh, maybe I guess I did. I'm just with Sigma.
And then Moira dove in a little too hard.
Yeah. I think it's unfortunate. Okay, team staggering, very split. Everyone's going their own places. Moira's trying to fade and is just gonna end up dying again. Yeah, so stagger. Okay, goes Hanzo. Right, little bit better than Hanzo's a little bit better than Widowmaker, but still not like wonderful. I'd say Hanzo, he can still one-tap Widow, and it's not gonna die to ball as easy, and can burn down the ball a bit easier. So it's better, but still not probably the best pick to pick here. It's good because of the map range. Oh, I finally actually shot something.
Oh jeez.
Okay. Like, does seem like just like run into all these mines?
I think so.
Look, he just jumps into. Oh my goodness.
That's one way to get rid of the mines, though. I guess is to sacrifice yourself.
Yep.
It's one way to help your team, I guess. Self-sacrifice.
Gale de Mahol.
Somebody finally dealt with Hamtaro.
Oh, I think I got my second kill of the game. No, I'm j- nah. Oh, I killed stuff. Guess Hanzo was better, because that's another thing sometimes too that you can keep in mind sometimes with teammates is like if you get if one character is just not working, even just
Just switch.
swapping, yeah, just switching up characters can help be a different change of pace. It can help turn things around. It'll be different.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
Land is within my reach.
60 seconds remaining.
A stick for the parched.
Pass into the iris.
Okay, Reaper tries flanking and then just gets shot and dies. That's my friend, by the way.
Singt för mig!
Ah, yes. So we can't actually hear the comms of you being like, why? Why are you throwing?
Moira's on point by herself, right? Everyone else is up on high ground, which, how do they get up to high ground? Zenyatta runs around, which just look at how split this team is. Reaper goes in by himself, Hanzo's down here, Moira's on point by herself, Zenyatta's off, like, climbing up the corner, the Sigma's, like, all the way up in the sky. Like, everybody's just, like, doing their own thing, which character in this game does that help the most?
Not a single one.
Well, on our team, which character on their team
Oh.
does that help?
Oh, jeez. That definitely helps, like, Ball and Soldier, because Soldier has ult.
Yeah, so exactly. Especially Ball, just throughout the whole game, is when people play split, like look how easy the Zen is to dive because he's not with Moira, because he's not with Sigma. It's because he's just like off on his own. Right?
You do gotta say for persistence, though, that somehow Red Team is still getting the point move fairly quickly.
Yeah.
30 seconds remaining.
Okay. Well, that's it for this one. Any questions on anything that we went over? Or anything else?
Not that I can think of now.
Alright. Cool, cool, cool.